Hey guys, welcome to Living the Logic. This is Manish Narayan, and this is part 2 of getting started with Python. In the previous video, we installed Python and went through some basic code. In this video, I'm going to talk about basic syntax and more about variables. And kind of the goal is to understand the structure of Python, the code itself, and how to work with variables. Okay, so let me give you an example of how the structure works in terms of spacing and indentation, kind of the syntax. So I'm going to just go one line below or a couple lines below where we left off last time. Okay, so Python, you have to understand Python uses indentation, meaning spaces or tabs, to define the code blocks instead of curly braces. Okay, so let me give you an example of that. So, and I'll get to more about conditionals and loops and so on. But in this case, let's start with a simple example of how Python structures or indents the code. So if I write if true, okay, and I hit enter, notice as soon as I hit enter, it kind of created some space here, right? A tab or space. So I can hit the back button, hit tab. Notice I hit the back button, hit tab, and Python's interpreter kind of understands the structure here. So if true, I'll just say print, and I can say this is indented. Okay. All right. So that's it, right? So if I run this, let's save that, and I'm going to go back to my terminal. I'm going to hit the up arrow and type in Python hello.py. Okay. Notice that if true, now in this case, you could put variables in here. I'll show you examples of that shortly. But in this case, it's always true, this conditional here. So if true, print out this statement. Okay. Notice there is a tab or indentation here. All right. Okay. Now that's kind of the structure or the indentation. Now Python, you can write simple comments in Python. All right. So let me give you an example of a comment here. So I can go next to, remember we created the 3 variables. I can use the hash symbol here. Okay. The hash symbol, I can say this is an integer. Okay. And I can say hash this is a floating point. Okay. This is a float, and hash this is a string. All right. So anything after this hash is considered a comment, and it doesn't, get compiled or anything. It's just there as a comment, as a placeholder. Okay. So I'll give you an example of a comment here. So I'll say this hash this is a comment. Okay. And then here I can just print this will print. Okay. So in this case, notice it does not print this comment. This is just for part of the code itself. It doesn't print out the output. The next line on 15, which is print this will print, will run. Right. So if I save this file and rerun it, notice it does not print any of the comments that we placed. It only prints the code statements. Okay. All right. So, and also just to note, comments help explain the code that you write. Maybe you're sharing this code with your friend or your coworker or a fellow student, and comments always help. Comments help explain what your code or what your snippet or what your algorithm does, and it helps others understand it. Okay, and it could be notes or placeholders for future code. All right. So now those are comments and indentation. Let's get into variables. Okay, so I'm going to just put a hash here and say variables. Okay, it's a section. All right, so let's talk about declaring and assigning variables. All right, so we'll say declaring and assigning variables. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is kind of introduce some variable declaration and assignment. So let's create or declare and assign 3 variables. All right, so we'll start with x equals 5. Okay, so notice here I created a variable called x. All right, and I declared it. All right, and then I assigned it a value of 5. Now, how do you assign the value 5 to x? You use an equal sign. Okay, so I'll put a comment here to say x was declared and assigned the value of 5. Okay, and then we can do the same thing. Let's say y equals 10 and z equals x plus y. All right, so now notice I can perform some arithmetic calculations with Python. So I can say the variable z is equal to x plus y. So notice x plus y will first get calculated, all right? And then once the value is calculated, meaning the addition in this case, it will then be assigned to the value or variable z, okay? So here, let's go ahead and print out the value of z. So I'm going to save this. We should hopefully get 15, 5 plus 10. So I'm going to rerun the script here. Perfect. And you notice here, we get an output of 15. Okay. So that's how you declare and assign a variable. You first declare your variable and then assign it using an equal sign. Okay. Right. Now, the next simple topic is, put a comment here. It's called type conversion. Okay. We talked about some basic data types. All right. Talked about integers above, right? Integer, which is 10. Floating point number that has a decimal, like 3.14. Okay. Now you can convert different types between each other, right? So for example, I can convert between different data types, such as a string. So let's create a string here. We'll call it a numeric string, right? So it's in quotations. Now strings are within quotations. Notice here, 10 is within quotation marks. Again, at the very beginning, we printed out hello world. Notice it was between quotation marks. So strings are contained within or enclosed within quotation marks. Okay. So I have a numeric string here. Now str is short for string. Okay. And then now I want to convert the type. Okay. I want to convert the string into a number. So I can create another variable or declare a variable called num and assign it and convert it or typecast it. Okay. An int. So what I do is use the int function here, and I pass it in my num string. Okay. So what's going to happen here is it's going to convert a string to an integer. Okay. So now if I print out num, hopefully it doesn't print out the string 10, but it prints out the number 10. Okay. So if I go ahead and rerun, notice it prints out 10 here. All right. Now let's do another example where we convert, say, from an integer to a floating point type. Okay. So I'm going to create a float num. Okay. And I'm going to make that, let's say, 5.7. Okay. And then I'm going to create an integer num. And I'm going to cast that float to an integer. Okay. So I'll use a float num. And let's see what happens. So this converts a float to an integer. Okay, now if I try to print out int num, what do you think is going to happen? Remember, integers don't store the decimal places, so there might be some rounding that's taking place. Okay, so let's try to print this out and see what 5.7, which is a float, what it looks like in the output when it gets converted to an integer. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and run this. Oh, it gets converted to 5. Okay, so notice the 0.7 got stripped off, and it took the whole number or the integer part of 5.7. So that's what happens when I converted this float to an integer. Okay. All right. So that's a little bit about type conversion. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about string concatenation. Okay. And a little bit of arithmetic. Okay. All right. So how do we concatenate strings? Concatenate is another word for combine. Okay, so let's say we want to combine hello world again, like we printed out earlier. So let's say I declare a variable called greeting, and we set it equal to hello. Okay, and if I want to concatenate a string, you can use the plus operator. All right, and I'll put world here. So notice the greeting is hello plus world. If I print this out, print out the greeting, let's see what happens. I'm going to run the script, and notice it printed in one line hello world. Okay, it didn't include the plus operator. The operator plus with two strings, it actually concatenates the strings. Okay, all right. So now with some arithmetic, some basic operations. All right, you can like sum. We actually saw that earlier. We summed x plus y. Okay, and we stored the value in another variable. So here's some arithmetic, another example. So we'll say sum. We're creating a variable called sum result. And we can do some simple math like 5 plus 3, and we can print out the sum result. Okay, so I'll save this file and rerun it in my terminal. And notice I get the sum result is 5 plus 3, which is 8, and that's what it prints out at the bottom. Okay, so thanks for watching. We covered just the basics of the structure of Python code, how it uses indentation, how to create comments in your code that are helpful, how to declare a variable and assign values to a variable, and then how to convert different types between basic types, like such as an integer to a float, or float to an integer, or string to an integer. And then we learned about concatenation and some basic arithmetic. Okay, again, feel free to play around with arithmetic and the string concatenation and assigning variables of your own. Thanks for watching. Hey guys, if you found the video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content. See you next time.